Welcome to Numinous Wishes and this program, a modern approach to shamanism, tantra, and other holistic subject. Tantra and some shamanism are a global subject. It is not confined to any country or any region or any religion or any language. So today we have an amazing facilitator from USA, Natasha, and she will introduce herself and she will give an introduction to the subject through this 35 to 40 minutes. Yeah, I'm handing over to her. Thank you.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Sovereignty Natasha, and so I'm located in the US, as you mentioned, in Austin, Texas currently. And I'm here today to talk about, sorry, looking back at the exact title because I didn't remember that, Tantra Shamanism and Holistic Practices, a Modern Approach. And so I'm someone that have been working with Tantra for some time, and it's really transformed my life. The most beautiful thing for me when I came to Tantra is that I realized that this was just a way of life that I had already been doing. And that's what I love about the practice, is that there's so much spaciousness in it for whatever walk of life you have, to just really engage with these practices and with a way of viewing life as a tantric way, that's really just a part of your life. And that's why it's so beautiful, because you can really connect with the divine in just the everyday moments. And a big tenement of that is really allowing ourselves to experience just the joy and the pleasure that we receive literally just from taking in the breath. And with that being said, I'd actually love to start today with just a little bit of an embodiment. I find that that always helps to really take in the experience, and really have an experience versus just being in this kind of intellectual heady place of trying to take in information. So I'd love for everyone to just close their eyes for a moment and just allow yourselves to really begin to settle and drop into your body, into your own personal space. Maybe this is the first time you're doing that today. And so I really just want you to take advantage of what it's like to be fully present as much as you can within your body right now, in this moment. And just notice, without judgment, what is present, accepting it. Pleasure, pain, whatever's there, just noticing. As you're noticing, you to begin to bring your awareness now to your breath, not to direct your breath, not to control it, but just to begin to notice, what does it feel like as you begin to receive the breath into the body? Encourage you to let a little natural sound just escape from the body and the breath. Sound, so important. Oftentimes we breathe in through the nose, out through the nose. Why? Because it's silent, and society has taught us to be silent, to not make sounds. That is not great for the body. Energetically, emotionally, the body it's primal, it's animalistic, it has a need to express. And so in this moment, I really invite you to explore that. Give yourself permission for there to be a little movement, a little freedom, a little sound that goes along with your body and your breath, just natural movements that come forth. I want you to begin taking a moment and trying out a few different types of breath. And so what I mean by that is maybe try taking an inhale through the nose and an exhale through the mouth. Or maybe try an inhale through the mouth and an exhale through the nose. Or maybe try inhaling through the nose and the mouth together. Or any other breath practices or varieties that you might have come across. I want you in this moment to give yourself permission to try out a couple of different breaths. And as you do that, I want you to notice which breath feels the best. Which one allows you to really experience the ripples of delight and bliss that are present in the chi, in the kundalini that we take in as we take in this breath. And again, just taking a few minutes to anchor that into yourself, bringing that breath deep into the belly, the womb. And you can hear, allow yourself to, you can keep the eyes closed, continue to stay with that breath as you continue to listen, or you can choose to open the eyes to be present with the experience of what's happening. If you do open your eyes, what I invite you to do is just to really allow yourself to stay in connection with your breath, and to really continue to just give yourself whatever breath feels good, and stay so in tune that you notice if your breath actually wants to change, if it wants to come a different way, and just fully give yourself permission to receive that. Just remembering that in each moment, that's as simple as it is. A lot of times we are just having a lot of stimulus coming at us, and that can really affect our nervous system. And when there's a dysregulated state, it can be a sense of not being embodied, not being within ourselves, maybe being really heady. And so when you're in that experience, it can be challenging to really know what's right for your body because there's a disconnection. But the beauty is that in any moment that that's occurring, you have the power to bring yourself back to your body simply by the power of your breath, and using a vibrational breath, a kind of sensation. And you can explore that yourself. And you want to really go for a feeling of a it allows the vagus nerve that is inside of us. It's a big nerve that innervates throughout the torso, our reproductive organs, throughout the throat. And what the vagus nerve does is when it creates that reverberation, it actually allows for the nervous system to rewire and reset itself back to a baseline, especially if it's been stuck in fight or freeze. And so I really just invite you, if you take one thing from what I shared today, I want you to take this breath. And any moment that you're noticing that you're not feeling connected, and just give yourself full permission in any given situation to just give yourself back that breath. And the beauty is it doesn't have to be loud. It could literally be like someone's having a conversation with you and you're feeling overwhelmed. You could just be like, be really low. Like, I'm going to do it so low you won't hear me really. Like, it doesn't have to be a loud thing. And just always acknowledging that you have that moment to pause, to bring yourself back into your body, to make sure that you are acting in a way that allows you to be in your responsibility, which is your ability to respond to stimulus around you from a place of choice and power. And so today, I mean, there's so much that I could share on this topic. I could talk for hours. I have not that much time today, but I'm grateful for the time I have. So I want to share a little bit about the idea of using desire as a gateway to liberation, because this is something that I find is really a core theme that you'll notice throughout Tantra and the practices that you might come across. And so the first thing that I want you to take in mind with that is that every aspect of our experience, including our sexuality, can be used as a gateway to the full realization of our spiritual essence. And so what that means is that our focus is not going to be only on the direct development of our consciousness, but also on the integration of what is unconscious. This requires that we bring an attitude of totality to every moment of our lives. And what that means is the ability to accept everything that is present. Because a lot of times, if we really drop into the fullness of an experience in the presence, what we'll notice is that there's going to be great joy and great pain that are often present at the same exact moment. And when we allow ourselves to come to a place of non-judgment, of just accepting that this is the experience, this is the sensations that it's bringing up in our body, because sensations are what are a truth. The emotions that we identify those sensations at, those are really a construct that we create from our mind. It's a perspective that we give. So that while there's a validity in what your emotions are, they're not a truth in the same way that sensations are in the body, which is a neutral experience. And it's more about our perceptions, our experiences, which are found in that unconscious space. And so one of the reasons that I find Tantra even really works with sexuality is because it is one of the most direct ways to connect with the unconscious while we are still awake. Because eros, our desires, they come from a deep, deep soul place. And when we begin to allow ourselves to approach desire from this standpoint, as Platos once said, the erotic principle in us leads to gnosis, or higher truth and realization. And so in Greek philosophy, eros is actually seen as the only element that can transform the human psyche. And this is where we start to see this practice of Tantra weaving through with this connection with our sexuality, which is this energy that I've mentioned before, this Kundalini, the idea of a kind of snake, kind of coral of the color is the way I imagine it when I see it within myself. And I'm curious, as you connect, if you can start to notice, what does your Kundalini look like? Because it might look different than mine. And that's what I love about this experience is as you start to explore, you start to realize like, oh, wait a second, what's inside of me? It's not the same as what's inside of me. And as we start to like communicate and be able to explore these things, I find we really start to open up and see a bigger perspective of what we're experiencing as a whole, and not just this kind of experience of only our perspective, which can create a deep sense of loneliness because, you know, we're here to connect with each other and to see what that experience can bring and expand within us. And so I want to talk a little bit now about desire and the base chakra. And so this is a place where our life force really gets grounded in our body, our life source. And so it's strongly going to be influenced with our openness to desire, our ability to be responsive to the desire that we're feeling inside of our body, and how much permission we give ourselves to receive that pleasure that comes from allowing us to have that desire. Because the bigger your desire, the more pleasure it's going to allow you to receive. And it's like there's this biofeedback system that we receive from this pleasure, and it really just lights up our souls. This is the idea when you start thinking about really tuning into what you're passionate about and allowing that to lead your life, to create from that space. And so it's really important to look at yourself and really explore, what is your relationship with desire? I know that for me, that was something that was really challenging when I started to come into this work. It's something that on my journey, I'm still opening myself up to. I have a lot of amazing, beautiful things that come into my life. And a lot of the times I'm still noticing that a lot of my work is really giving myself permission to be like, oh my gosh, like, yes, this is okay. And I can enjoy this, and it's good. Because I had a lot of conditioning being raised Christian. growing up in the US. And this idea that pleasure, especially as a woman, was not something that I was supposed to have or take, and that it was actually extremely shameful to even think in this way. And so that's something that has really affected me. I want to talk a little bit too of some of the examples of maybe some patterns that might be working in your unconscious, that as you start to work with Tantra, and especially through what I call erotic integration work. A lot of what I love to personally do is really work with like sexual shadow work. I find that with our culture and all of the shame that we've placed on our sexuality, our expression of it, which is really our creative expression, the essence of who we are, it just creates this space of judgment, of desires, and the psyche is an interesting thing, because soul desires, they don't come out as soul desires. It's not like it comes out and it's like the desire is like, oh, this is what you really want. It really does require us to be present and to tune in to what it is that's really turning us on, the nuances, because what we see is what our psyche projects, which is what we can call referred desires. And so an example I'll share for that, a shameful sexual fantasy that I carried for a long time was I had this strong desire of like, I really wanted to be intimate with strangers, people that I did not know. Like, and it was so hot to me, this idea of like someone that like I didn't know, and just having all of a sudden this like immediate just like drop in and comfortability and intimacy and depth of connection, like just complete total immersion. And I shamed myself for this for years. It was so challenging because, especially at the beginning of a relationship, this particular fantasy would come up so strong. And it would be terrible because, on one hand, I would be falling deeply in love with my partner. And then on the other, I would be having this immense desire to just connect with other individuals. And it was so strong of like not knowing. And then as I came to this work and I started to really dive into that and explore, what I realized underneath is, oh, this is actually my soul desire to know what I was thinking is like the unknowable, the unnameable parts of myself. And so once I understood that, it was just like, shoo, and it was like, oh no, I don't want to go out and just hook up with strangers and have meaningless sex or one night stands, which is, that's what I thought that my body was asking for and that I was wanting. And I was like feeling such shame. And also like those experiences were not bringing me joy or fulfillment. And so now instead, it's more that I go into these spaces where there's an intention and a desire to connect with the soul, with the human, the being that's in front of you. And, we do these things called Kuja Circles, where we circle around and we gaze into the eyes of another being in front of us, with just this openness and this love, this moment of really connecting and seeing the other for who it is, and really allowing ourselves to be present so we can take away the projections that we often put on top of the other person. And what you'll notice is oftentimes it brings up a lot of discomfort, because it can be really uncomfortable to be in that space of seeing each other of like, oh my gosh, this is just who you are in this moment, in feelings, without a mask, without hiding, without like, oh, this is who I'm supposed to be, of like, this is just who I am right now in this moment, whatever that is. And so I want to circle back then, as I mentioned, so some of the patterns that, I've seen drop away throughout my exploration with my work and through work I've done with my clients are these subliminal feelings of guilt and obligation that we carry inside of us. These programs that we've been taught of like, oh, we should live a certain way, we should show up a certain way, we should want these things, which is often passed down from our family. And it's well intentioned, But it's this idea that we're all one person, and there's this one experience that's just going to fit for all of us, and that's not a truth. We know that we're all different and unique, and yeah, there's a sameness, a bond that connects us, but it's really in the beauty of our differences, that we create this cosmic experience. And so another pattern that I find can really ease up is overachievement and hyper alertness. And for both of these were really big for me. I come from a background of a lot of trauma where my nervous system just kind of shuts down and does like really strange things. And it's still an experience that I have on a continual basis that it can create a lot of frustration. But what's beautiful is now being at this place with these practices is like, I don't judge myself for it. I don't shame myself. I don't say, what's wrong with me? Instead, in those moments when they happen, I say, oh, wait a second. Something just happened. And like, I need care. I need love. I need a pause. And I can stop and I can be in my breath and I can tune and be like, oh, what was there? What happened? And that's where the gift comes, where you start to be able to see that space of what the patterns are and how to release. And so some more patterns that we can see begin to dissolve and release from the body are survival fears or just a survival drivedness at all. So many of us, we're just in this do kind of place. And there is kind of this space of being where we do allow ourselves to drop into the experience of life, where it can just be like this flow of like, oh yes, I have this authentic impulse, this authentic desire that comes up that does want to be met. And then you get to go and play and explore. You get to say, oh, hey, universe, yes, I figured it out. This is what I want. And you get to go check in with the other beings like, hey, this is what I want to experience. Who else wants to play with me? Who else has a desire to be in this experience? And then you get to see if one or two or however many people want to come and cultivate that experience with you and be in that connectedness. And it's such an amazing space. And really, I think if there is a desire of like, what is the meaning of life? Like, what more meaning do we need than to be in that experience of shared connection with each other? I think if we all tune in and think about it, any moment we've ever had where we felt that feeling of like, oh, this is what it's about, it's that. It's that moment of feeling so connected with yourself and so connected with another being that you're just like, wow, like this is just it. And I think that we've all had a moment or two of like that in our life, if we think about it, whether it's with a parent or just a close friend or sibling or loved one, or even just a new connection that really is like that instantaneous kind of soul bond. I just really love that Tantra is such a space where that's what it gives you the ability to bring this into your life so that, like life is still going to be life. We're still going to wake up in the morning and feel whatever we're feeling. We're still in this collective experience that's just like, it's energy. And sometimes the energy is like, ah, and sometimes the energy is like, ah, but it's there, and we're gonna wake up, we're gonna do whatever it is to make ourselves feel good, to connect with our bodies, to discover like, okay, how do I want to show up in this day? What do I want to experience? Who do I want to show up for? And most importantly, you get to realize that you get to make those choices. You don't have to wake up every morning and go to a 9 to 5. If that is exciting to you, if it's like, yes, that is what I want, amazing. Yes, then that is for you. But if you're waking up in the morning and you're like, this is terrible, my body is heavy and I don't feel good, it's your body expressing like, that's not for you. And as scary as it is, the more you begin to slow down and work with Tantra and these practices of presence, it just frees up the space to realize, wow, I really can create something for myself. I do have that power. It's not going to be necessarily easy because it's going to probably go against a lot of what you believe is right. And so it does create this feeling of like, oh my goodness, what is happening? But what is beautiful is that when you link into what is that authentic truth for yourself, there is going to be this ease that comes when you do decide to take that action and show up for yourself. And so, yeah, it might feel scary and terrifying of like using your voice and being like, oh, you know what? Actually, like, no, I'm a no on this. And I need to like say that. But the beauty is the more that you do that, the more that you'll find this ease in your body, that sense of safety, that comfort that you're looking for. That's where it is. And it comes from listening to our body and what it's telling us, and from us giving ourselves permission to say, you know what, no matter what else is happening around me, whatever I've been taught, I'm going to put myself and my body's needs first. And when we do that, the whole world just completely shifts. And so, yeah, I feel like at this time I am feeling a desire to pause. Well, there's one last pattern that I'll share, and then I'm going to kind of have a pause and just open up a space for some conversation in the last few minutes and let that kind of flow. And so the last pattern that we can really release here, and this is the one I think where as a collective really work, is a strong split in our perception between this idea of good and evil, right and wrong, hypermoralism. And so I'm going to take another minute just to share just a little bit on that, because that's a really strong one. And what this is this idea that there is a right or wrong way to show up. And we have definitely across the board been conditioned to believe that, especially in order to receive love, there's a certain way we are meant to show up, with sweetness, with kind words. And you know what? That's not a truth. It's nice to receive love in that way. And absolutely, you can decide to have a standard and preference in your life to only receive love in that way. But it's a beautiful thing when you open your mind and your capacity to be present with another human, who they are, what they are, and open yourself up to receive their love in the way they share it, which maybe sometimes their love is a little anxious. Maybe it comes from this place of, but if it's this amazing thing, if you really connect with people from this place of love, it's like you start to see through and underneath, and you're like, oh my goodness, this anxiousness is coming because you care so much that you're like, oh, this is important to me. And it's like, it's almost like as you acknowledge that, it's like your body gives their body permission to just be present there. And like all of a sudden it's like, yeah, there might be that anxiety, but it starts to shift, and you start to receive, instead of what you might perceive as anxiety, you start to receive this person as love. And it's just this beautiful experience of what I would call alchemy, where you start to notice that even though there's this idea that this energy is wrong or bad or negative, it's actually a gift. One of the greatest gifts that I gave myself, and I wish I had done it sooner, was giving myself full permission to be angry at my parents for the ways that they didn't show up and care for me. And I wish I had done that actually when my mom was still alive. It was really hard for me because the deep bond and connection with my mother and a lot of deep pain and wounding. But what I've learned is that the moment I gave myself permission to be fully angry and really just curse her out, all the things, all of a sudden everything started to shift. And I started to actually feel closer to my mother. I started to feel the love that I was angry that I couldn't feel because I was so angry at her. And it's like all of a sudden I started to go back and realize, like, wow, I do have a lot of trauma in my childhood, but also there's a lot of gifts that I have not been allowing myself to receive. There's love here. And I think it's a beautiful thing when you can start to open up and realize that underneath, love is truly all there is.
Nadasha, still we have only 8 minutes.
Yeah.
I have one question. It's about, there are two approaches of Tantra, the Western and Eastern. So it is a mind shift. I will not say it is a country or it's country based or something. It's a mind. So do you find at any point of time there is a synchronicity going to happen in future or at now or at present?
I mean, I would say always. I also am someone that that's a little bit of how I follow my desire. I like to play games with the universe, and I feel like synchronicities, that's something that the universe is letting us know, like, oh, hey, we want you to pay attention because there's something here that's like coming up that's letting you know, like, oh, this is catching your attention. And if something's catching your attention, especially if there's like a, oh, that's a desire. And so I feel like synchronicities are kind of that way of following that universal thread, especially because a lot of times we might kind of deny or repress that desire. And so that's why it's important to start looking and noticing, like, oh, what's popping up that you are kind of feeling like, ooh, and bonus points if it's that, like, ooh, because I find the things that have the most juice, it's going to be the thing that simultaneously excites and terrifies you at the same time. I also want to note you mentioned that there's kind of two approaches to Tantra, like an Eastern and a Western way. And I know a lot kind of in the Eastern, this called like a Neo-Tantra. It's a strong focus on exploring, the sensual, the sexual, kind of a partner experience. And so for me it's interesting because, as you said, I tend to work with the practices more at the sense of totality, and so I really do my best to cultivate a non-preference for the way I work with tantras and the practices, just because I find that that brings the most juice. And I really like to invite people to explore on their own always, because like I said, everyone's different. We're all going to have a different experience. But I do like to invite them to explore what it's like to kind of work with all the practices and not have like a preference one or the other. So sometimes you might, because that's what you're needing and what you need to balance in your experience, and there's no shame in that. But, once again, that's the beauty of this practice, because it really teaches you and anchors you that everything is always shifting. And so literally you could be having a practice that's amazing for you, and then all of a sudden you notice, like, this isn't doing it for me. And so, like, that's a place where it's like, there's no shame there. There's nothing wrong, nothing. This just means, oh, you've evolved past this experience, and this isn't providing what it is. Maybe it will again one day, and then that's the time of just like opening up that space of like, this is playtime now. Like, this is now new self-discovery of like, there's new that's being revealed, and opening up that space to allow whatever new practices want to come in.
And how you connect shamanism with tantra? Is it well synchronized, or
Yeah.
how you call it? Yeah.
Yeah, I find that it's really just weaved into the practices themselves. A lot that I work with come from the Taoist traditions, which I think are really strong shamanistic practices. And once again, I use this word alchemy. And at the beginning, when I guided into the breath work, I used a little bit of a somatic breath. And one of the reasons I love sharing that is because it's helpful, like in a very practical way, but also that is alchemy. You use that breath, especially in a circular motion. Like, this is the key. You want to just make sure that the breath stays in a continuous circle in a loop. Some people call this a holotropic breath. And so, some call this just like, like a microcosmic breath, many different names for a similar experience. But at the core of it, it's allowing yourself to continuously inhale and exhale and not let that kind of catch and contraction happen in the body. And so when you can do that very softly and gently, we like to push as a society. And I find that really interesting. Even within the Tantra world, I find there's a lot of, and that is a way, and it will get you places. But what I find, less is so much more. The more you soften, the more that you just, the more the energy will move in a very palatable way, that you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm vibrating. And it's very easeful for the body.
Shamanism is a big subject for another day. It's a big subject in itself. We will discuss it maybe in another time. Thank you so much for the introduction to the modern approach of Tantra Shamanism and other holistic practices. This is just an introduction, but you share a lot. And, so we are winding up in 2 minutes. And yeah, this was an amazing start, an amazing session. If anybody want to add something to it, you are free to add, or we wind up as soon as the time finish.
Yeah. Beautiful. And so just for these last few minutes, I'd love to just wrap up really quickly and just 5 reasons to really embrace your desire and what that can do for you. And so the first is it takes you the resolution of the unconscious. And that, my loves, is freedom. Because whatever you're doing, it's your unconscious. No matter who you are, where you're at, that's just how we operate. And so if you want to feel free and like you're in your choice, this is a beautiful way to do that. 2, it makes our desire a place of presence. It's not going to be a place that we're afraid of, that we run from, but it's going to be a place where we create intimacy, connection, love, unity. 3, it ignites the fire of our life force. This is what wakes up our Kundalini. Kundalini loves being turned on and excited. And you know what? When it stays awake, presence. The reason oftentimes Kundalini is up, we feel it, we're sexual, and then we have orgasm. We fall asleep. Once that energy is out, we're like, oh, stay present, stay with it, see what happens. Woo, that energy is going to shoot up. You're going to have orgasms like you never dreamed of. It's amazing. Orgasms that just happen from you walking in life because your energy is just flowing and you're just filled with it. Number 4, it confronts us with our taboos. And so this is really important because this is the areas where we hold a lot of shame. And oftentimes that's where our wounding is, because we've cut off these parts of ourselves that we've been taught are shameful. And I guarantee you, the more shameful you think something is, the more beautiful it turns out to be. The more that it is a gift and an essence of your being and who you are. And number 5, and one of my favorites, as you can probably tell, I'm a person that loves intensity, and working with desire will speed up the journey of your awakening. And if, enlightenment is something you desire, you can achieve it. I think it's really arrogant to think you can't. I think it's a lack of responsibility. And I think the reason we want to say that is because it's scary to hold ourselves that responsible and accountable. And it makes us realize that we are that powerful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are winding it up now. We will have more sessions in near future. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much
Om
for
Shanti,
inviting
Shanti,
me.
Shanti.
It's an
Yeah.
absolute pleasure and delight.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Be well, everyone.